Hello everyone. So today what we're going to be doing is basically figuring out how to add slots and more tabs to our robot, as well as properly aligning our gearbox. Okay, so let's get to it. The first thing that I'm going to do is essentially go into my side panel, as I've always been doing up until this point. And then basically now that I'm looking at this my sketch block, I need to decide exactly where the sketch block needs to go. In order to decide where the sketch block needs to go, I have to remember that in these holes that I've cut out over here is where the motors are going to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at what the motor size is to make sure that there's no interference. I don't want the motor sticking up over the top, and I definitely don't want the motor protruding into like the random back plate or front plate of my robot. So the first thing I need to do in order to decide that is head over to the VexPro website. So I went to the VexPro website to look at the sim motor, and I went to the CAD files over here, and then I clicked download. Once I clicked download, I opened the step file and loaded it into SolidWorks by essentially clicking and dragging. And once I do that, SolidWorks makes me go through a bunch of feature recognition and such. But you can see that once I've opened it over here, here's my sim. And as soon as it opens, right, so now what I want to do is I want to take a look at the actual size of this sim, or the center to side distance of this. And so if I go to Evaluate, Measure, if I just click on the edge of the sim, it will tell me what the diameter is, which is about 2.5 inches, or about 1.25 inches from the center to the edge of the sim motor. So, in order to accommodate that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a little bit extra. I'm going to give it 1.5 inches. So I'm going to go to the sketch that this is and edit it, and I'm going to Smart Dimension the center of the sim to the top here. And I'm going to say that's going to be 1.5 inches. Okay, and then also from this side here, I'm going to measure from here to over there, and I'm going to do the same thing, and that's going to be 1.5 inches as well, 5 inches as well. And what that does is it maintains the fact that my sim isn't going to be rubbing up against my back plate at all. Okay, so now what you've seen once I've done this is that so even though my sim is now no longer protruding above the top plate, I now have a bearing hole that goes outside of my extrusion. So let's first fix that. So the way I'm going to fix that is I'm going to exit this sketch, and I'm going to make a new sketch on this plate. So I'm going to go click on Sketch, I'm going to click on this plate, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a series of lines that are going to make me a nice little protruding type thing. And how do I do this? I'll just like make it there, to over there, and then back down to there, and then close that loop up. And so I'm going to do a few things with Smart Dimension. The first thing I want to do is I probably want to Smart Dimension from there to there. And 1 inch that's probably good. So that gives me about what? That gives me a bit less than half an inch of clearance. 1 inch. A little bit less than half an inch of clearance between the radius of the hole here, or the edge of the hole here, and the actual outside. And then I can do a couple of clever things where I make a center line that is, I don't know if I can make it tangent to the circle. I suppose I can just make a circle from this center point here, and smart dimension it to be 1.25 or 1.125 inches. I'm going to turn that into, oops, turn that into a construction line. And the use of this is that I can now make a line like that, and I'm going to make another construction line that starts from the center of the circle to the edge of the circle and then straight down from there. And what I can do is I can just click and drag on this point back over here, just make it lock right on like this. I can do the same with that one and make it lock right on like that. And so now I have a very nice symmetric thing here. And so also what I'm going to do is I'm going to smart dimension the distance from that line to that line. And I'm going to do it in the vertical direction. And so what this is going to do is it's going to say, okay, this is going to be exactly 1 inch. And then finally, that one I don't think needs to be like that there. That one is, and this one has been made perpendicular to this line, I believe. Hopefully. And I will just make a line that connects these two dots, and again, smart dimension it. Smart dimension these 2 points to be exactly 1 inch. And you can kind of do whatever you want with this extra piece here, however you want to make it. Maybe you might want to make it look like a semicircle instead, or like 2 semicircles or whatever. This is the simplest thing that I can do. But essentially what you want to do is you want to create more material here so that you're not creating a whole out of nothing. So I'm going to exit this sketch, and then I'm going to go to Features, and I'm going to just extrude it in the same way I've been doing it before. And it's again going to be 1/4 inch. And my direction is wrong in this case. And it's very important that I press the Merge Results checkmark, because as soon as I press the OK button, you're going to see that it's now been merged. And now I can go right ahead and extruded cut my my gearbox, and I'm done. What I want you to do is I want you to do the same process on the other side of the of your base, so that you have you have a gearbox on either side with this extra extruded cut. You don't have to use the measurements that I did for the top hole. You could use the ones that you took from the robot. That's fine. But basically, this is how you are going to create a extra little piece that allows you to make a cutout for your gearbox. The next thing that I want to do is actually look at slotting these things together. So if I go back and save this, and if I go back to my actual assembly, where my assembly is, which is over here, yes, I do want to rebuild the assembly, you can see that that even though I've tabbed these pieces together, after any form of motion, these tabs are eventually going to like wiggle themselves out. And so I need some way of affixing these together. Now normally what we would do, if this were some form of like competition robot, is that we would just weld the pieces together. But unfortunately, because we were going to have a lot of robots, welding is a little bit of a time consumer because we only have one welder and so many robots. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to place L brackets along these 2 pieces like you've seen in the other robots. But in order to do that, I'm going to need to create slots in these regions. So let's actually create these slots. So I'm going to go into my piece, and I'm going to go and make a new cutout. Again, let's go to Sketch and click on this that we're going to sketch on. And I should probably create another center line, because of the fact that I am likely going to want to mirror it to the other side. And now what I'm going to do is create a slot. Just a straight slot, and it's going to be anywhere along here, and it's going to be horizontal. So I need to make sure that it's horizontal, that this little green thing is appearing saying that it's horizontal. And yeah, so that's what I'm going to create here. Now, in terms of smart dimensioning it, I need to make sure that the center of it is about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge of my robot, or the edge of my side plate, or the front plate. The width of this, because we're going to be using M8 bolts, this is going to be 8.2. We're using 8.2 millimeters. And so you can see that it's shrank it considerably. And then finally, this last business here is the size of the slot, and it's going to be 1.01 inches. And so I'm going to put that as 1 inch. Actually, I made a mistake, I believe. This probably doesn't need to be a full inch long. This probably can be half an inch. Does that look about right? You could probably make it 3/4 of an inch as well. And I'm going to make this distance here, I'm going to make this 1 inch. So the center distance from the center to the inside edge is going to be 1 inch. And then finally, what we have to do is we have to create a center line that's straight in the middle of this point here, and I'm just going to have it come straight off in this direction, so that I can just drag my my slot up and down until it locks straight on my center line. And so now you can see that my slot is black, and that basically tells me that I'm in a good position for my slot. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate that. And in order to duplicate that, I'm just going to create another center line from here, and I'm just going to move that all the way down to the center, just for fun. It doesn't actually need to be like this. And then I'm going to do mirror entries for this slot, and I'm going to mirror it about that line, and now I know I'm done. I'll press OK. And then finally, I'm going to do another mirror entries. I'm going to mirror these two slots, and I'm going to mirror it about this line here, and you can see that I've created these two slots over there. Finally, I'm going to exit this sketch and just cut this out. We're going to do through all. And press OK. And there we go. Now we've got my slots. Now this looks a little bit funny to me, that my slot is interfering with my gearbox. So this is a good time for me to change this dimension perhaps. So maybe instead of 1.5 inches, I change this to a straight up 2 inches instead. And I'm going to press the rebuild button. And so now you can see that my gearbox has kind of moved away a little bit more. I could probably also fix the and you see that because I've constrained the extra tab to where the position of this hole is, it slid around with it as well. Finally, the last thing I'm going to do with this is, if I really wanted to, I could change this to 1.3 inches instead, and just move it up a bit and rebuild. And you can see that a weird thing happened here, and so I'm going to have to do one more smart dimension. Smart Dimension, and I'm going to Smart Dimension the angle here. And right now the angle is 84.24, and I clearly don't want that. I want 90 degrees. And just press straight enter there, exit the sketch, and now I have something that looks a little bit nicer, I think. Again, if I wanted to, in this sketch, I could take the whole thing and I could probably mirror the entries. Create another line, a center line here that starts in the center, goes down to there. Click on Mirror Entries. Just the entire gearbox, I can mirror that about that line. And press OK and exit the sketch, and then it should, yeah, it's created this block here. And then finally, for this boss extrude, I could go into that sketch. I could click on Mirror Entries. I could just highlight all that. I could mirror that about. Whoops, I didn't create a center line. I need to create a center line. I'm going to create I've created a center line, and now I'm going to once again try Mirror Entries, and I'm just going to highlight everything. I'm just going to mirror it about there so that I've got it all working nicely. I'm going to exit the sketch, and there we go. Now my side plate is it's done quite nicely. Let me move to, that's the last thing that I want to do on the side panel in this video, and the next video I'll talk about doing some slots along the top, and in the other, but first I want to go to the front and back panel, so you can see that in my robot base, yes, I do want to rebuild the assembly. In my robot base, I have these nice slots, but I have them nothing for my L brackets, but I have nothing to slot them into, or I have no other place for my L brackets to go into. So that's what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to make it so that I can put these L brackets in here. Now you can do one of two things. You can either decide to put slots along here and along here, or you can just put them in the middle and then have two L brackets bind to each other. Now that it becomes a little bit annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create, I'm just going to go slot crazy. Just slot, slot, slot. Everything's a slot. So let's go into the front panel. And I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did before. So let's go and create a sketch. I'm going to create two center lines, one from the center here that just goes right across the robot, and another that goes from the center here that goes right across the robot. And in this case, it's going to be a little bit easier. Again, I want to make sure the width of my slot is most important. The length isn't nearly as important. So the width of my slot is going to be, again, 8.2 millimeters. I'm going to create a center line along this piece here. And maybe another thing I want to do is, because I've created the center line, I can make the slot essentially straight up in the center of where this is. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to create, there we go. I'll just do that. So I can take the center of the slot and place it straight in the middle right there. And I want to make sure that it's long enough. In order to make sure that it's long enough, I do that. At some point I can smart dimension it. There we go. And I'm going to do 3/4 of an inch. And I'm done with my slot there. I'm going to exit the, or not like that, I'm going to exit the sketch, but I'm done with smart dimensioning, and now I just do my mirror entries again. So click on mirror entries, click on the slot, mirror about this line, press OK, mirror entries, slot 1, slot 2, mirror about the center line. Actually, I should cancel that. Actually, I'm going to undo that last mirror as well, because I realized that I've made a mistake. I forgot to put another slot over here. So I'm going to do a cheap trick to make the slot over there. I'm going to make another center line. Basically, I'm just making lines to mirror things everywhere. If you love geometry, you would love this, because these are just basically construction line after construction line. So mirror that slot about this line here. There we go. We're done. Don't have to worry about anything anymore, because it's the same distance from the slot on either side. And then finally, I'm going to do that, and mirror that about this line. And now I have 4 slots. And then finally, do mirror entries. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to mirror that about the center line over here. And now you can see that I am done. I can exit this. I can extruded cut this. Again, through all, press OK. And now I have my slots. And so at this point, my base is ready to be assembled without any form of top plates or weight relief. So this will be a very heavy yet functional base. And by functional, I use that term incredibly loosely. Yes, I would like to rebuild the assembly. And so now you can see that I have a nice gearbox. I have some nice slots that are going to make sure that my gearbox is stuck together. Remember how these slots should absolutely line up, and that's because I used my reference point, which is the center of these tabs here. If you didn't do that, then there's a good chance that your slots don't line up, and if your slots don't line up, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble when you start putting L brackets on. If you want to check whether your slots line up, I can go to my Evaluate tab, click on the Measure tool, and just click on the top of that slot versus the top of that slot. And it should not have it should only have a DZ and a DX, or a DZ and a DY. It shouldn't have all 3 distances, because that last distance should be 0. So it should know that these are on the same plane. And you can see now that I've made the measurement, if I rotate it so that one of them is completely flat, the other one becomes completely flat too. So I know that I did a reasonable job here in making these slots. Okay, so this is this video, and in my next video we will talk about how to make the top plate and the tabs for the top plate, as well as just doing general weight relief for both the front and the side plate, because we're basically there at the point that we can make some really nice looking weight relief. Okay.